Hi everybody, Leslie here, back in my craft lab. I've been a bit absent with videos, sorry about that, but it's been so noisy. They've been digging up the road outside my house to put new internet cables in. I'm in a garage conversion, so I'm right by the road, unfortunately. I thought I would get this out there really quickly in case you're looking for cards for Father's Day ideas. These could be used for any masculine card ideas, but also for any idea whatsoever. The only limit with this one is your imagination. I've gone with a hiking boot theme today, which is great if you've got gentlemen in your family coming up to Father's Day and things that aren't interested in sports and things, and this might be more their scene. But you could use this technique with any outline shape. You could have a lady's stiletto with flowers inside it, anything that's a recognisable silhouette shape. Boats, you could put a seaside scene inside it. You could do a house shape with a country garden scene inside it. The only limit is what stamps you've got that you could put inside and your own imagination of what silhouette shape you can use. So I'm going to show you how to make your own little masks. Do a couple of variations, one more like a highlight, like this one like this. Let's go on with it. I chose to use this stamp set, which is one that came with Creative Stamping. It's a few years old, I think, but all you need is some sort of scene stamp. So this one I thought fit perfectly. Equally, I could have done something similar with this one. This is another one that came with Creative Stamping. Any sort of biggish scene set. Even there's this one down here with a little house in it. You could do that inside a different shape. So there's lots of ways you could use this technique depending on what stamps you've got. I found my silhouette image that I wanted to use. So what I did is I went on the internet and I printed out roughly to the right size. So I knew I was going to make an A6 card, UK A6, so roughly US A2 sized. And I printed my image and the prints on the other side. But I just then cut out the image that I'd got off the internet. So this is just the silhouette, it's just an outline. It can be any shape you want it to be. Then I got a piece of paper. So this is just A4 paper because I'm making A6 card. If you're in the US, letter size paper will work. So all I did was fold it into quarters. So now that's the size of my card blank that I'm intending to use. I sized this image to be roughly the same size, or roughly the size that looks right on my card. So now that this is folded up, all I did, and this is so I can make lots of masks at once, is I took my shape, popped it where I wanted it on my A6 size piece, drew around it with my pencil. Simple as that, just drew around it, nothing fancy. And then with it folded, just holding it all together, the reason these have got a little bit of tape on is because this is what I picked the shortest point from the edge and cut all 4 layers out at once. And this is just thin copy paper, so it's really easy to cut through with scissors. If you're struggling, cut it in half maybe and only do 2 layers at a time. But I had no issues cutting through just thin printer copy paper, 4 layers. So now cutting it out once, I've actually ended up with 4 masks and I've got 4 outline masks. And to use this, I'm just going to cut it up on my guillotine on my fold lines. So you don't need to cut 4 at once. It's just a quick way to get 4 pieces, cutting it out just the once. There's my 4 masks. I'm only going to use 2 of them, but if I wanted to go on and make some more cards, I've got them ready to go. To get the placement on my card, I've just stamped, again, this is just some scrap copy paper. I've put my stamp on and I've stamped it so that I can now use one of my outer masks and decide where I want my image to sit on my image. So I made sure I didn't stamp it too far into the corner. So if I wanted it down here and have a lot of blue, I could, put it down here. I made sure I've got plenty space to do it whichever way round I wanted. And I realised very quickly that my image has got this nice line here, which kind of sits in line with my boot. So again, it's nice because I can put these masks either way up, doesn't matter. And I can decide where I want my image to sit on my card, which is the same size as this image. So I've got my card blank, and obviously I'm using it this way, and that's why I'm using this stamp platform today, because I can hang my card out the edge. You can do it with like a Misty that's got an edge, but it's easier if you've got a stamp platform that's not got edges all the way around. So I know that's where I want it. I know this is the same size as my card. I can pop that lined up with my mask. Just pop a magnet on. I am going to take this down in a sec. Oh, I've just moved it. So let's do that again because I moved it. Right, so I'm just holding it. Pop my magnet on my card. Now I can take my mask out and line it back over the top. And I've just got some washi tape so that now I can put my mask over the top. I'm just going to stick both of them down just to make sure that when I'm stamping, everything's going to be covered and I can stamp inside that shape. Now, as long as my piece of paper that's got my stamped image on it is pushed into this corner, I know nothing should move, and I can put my magnets wherever I want to make sure it's all nicely held down. So we can do a little test, make sure that looks good. Yeah, if you think you've got any edges sticking out anywhere, obviously you can always put another little piece of tape or masking, another piece of scrap, just to make sure. But I don't think anything's sticking out on my card. I'm just going to ink this up. I'm using VersaFine because I'm going to use, I think, Distress ink to colour this today. So I need a waterproof ink. And because you've got that mask, you do need to make sure you've got some good pressure, especially around the edges of the mask, or it will miss tiny little edges. Now, my image is quite a sketchy, scribbly image anyway, but you'll see here, it's not caught inside the mask edge. So we do just need to make sure that we're applying good pressure. If you've ever had problems with stamping platforms, if you've got a glass mat and there's some flex in your glass mat, this is my trick. I do this with my stamp down, I lift it up. Because this flexes, you sometimes don't get the pressure in the right place. It would be better if I took my glass mat off, but that ruins all my filming setup because I use my glass mat to make sure that I'm in frame. So I could put this directly on my really solid work surface, but this also works, I found. But it's due to the flex in the surface underneath usually, if you're not getting a good impression. And I'd say that looks pretty good now. I don't want to actually take my mask off. I'm just going to heat set this just to make sure that my ink's dry before I start colouring. And I've just got a whole selection of inks. I was thinking for the water at the front, I'd do peacock feathers and tumbled glass. For the sky, I've got faded jeans and stormy sky. And for all the different greenery areas, I've got pine needles, bundled sage, and mowed lawn. I'm not an amazing fancy artist. I am literally just going to use my Distress inks just to add a bit of colour in places. So I'm going with the darker colour on my kind of evergreen trees. I'm just going to be careful to make sure I've not got too wet a brush and that it doesn't seep under the edges of my mask. There we are. I'm no great artist, like I say. My theory was, let's just get some nice colouring on there. And then hopefully, if I've not got too much paint seeping under my mask, when we pull this off, there we have it. We've got our single layer card. I think that's still quite clearly a hiking boot. It still looks like one to me. And I've got my image inside it, and that is single layer on my card blank. Now I can put any greeting I want on top of that. Maybe make this one a happy birthday card. My husband's birthday is in June. A nice masculine idea. Like I said, you could do a boat outline and make it more beach themed. And I thought that little happy birthday stamp would fit on there quite nicely. I'm going to take my life into my hands and put this on a block and just freehand stamp it. And if I mess it up, it will become a not one layer card, and I'll stamp it on another piece of card and stick it over the top. I am actually going to just stamp on a piece of scrap. I don't think I've ever used this stamp, so not bad for a first impression. But your second impression is pretty much always better. So if it's a brand new stamp, always stamp on some scrap first. I have a little pile of it. And I think because of the style of the stamp, it doesn't matter too much if it's not really straight, so I'm not too concerned. I'm happy with that. Obviously, you could colour it in with any medium. Stamp it in Memento, you can do it in alcohol marker, you can watercolour. Just be careful that if you're watercolouring like I was, I made sure when I was doing the edges that my brush was quite dry. So if my brush was a bit wetter, I'd start in an area not near the edge and then go to the edges. And like I say, it doesn't need to be perfect as long as you can recognise what that image is still. And I had thought, especially if you were doing something like at the beach scene idea, you could come back with your inner mask, pop that back over the top, and like do some splatter. So if you don't like the stark white around it and you want something around it, you could come and stamp something different on the outside. Just use a little piece of rolled up washi tape or low tack tape underneath this to hold it. So I thought that was one way we could do this. And then the other way is actually simpler. I stamped my image. So this is the full image this time. So instead of just using part of my image, this time I'm going to use my full image. What I thought with this one, I could even do it the other way around, so it's facing the different way. Draw around it. Now I thought I could do a Father's Day card like this. So I've got a Happy Father's Day stamp. This is Wiry Words from, this is a CraftStash brand, so this is the creative brand. I thought with the big empty space down here, my Happy Father's Day would probably fit in there, which I think it will, but I'm not going to stamp it till after I've coloured. So what I thought for this one, so this time I've not got it lined up exactly. I've moved it down a bit to make sure that I've got space for that in the empty space with no lines on it. And this time I'm going to draw around my image. So I am securing it. I'm going to stick it to my board as well for now. And I decided I'd get a thick black pen. This isn't waterproof. I could have done this in alcohol marker. I like the thickness of this one. So I'm going to just draw around my image. So that was just black felt tip. If you've got one of these, this is the Versamarker. So this is the same ink that's in Versamark ink pad. So this is the clear sticky ink, and this has got two ends. It's got a brush tip and a bullet tip. If I can find a link for it, I'll link it in the description, because I think we forget we've got these things. You might already have one in your stash, but what you can do now is use that on top of your black. So it doesn't matter what black pen you've done underneath. I can go round with my Versamark pen. And if I'd been smart, I would have put some anti-static on this. But my ink that's at my VersaFine ink has been drying for a few hours. I actually stamped this and then went and ate my lunch before I started filming, I'll be honest. So it shouldn't stick anywhere on my VersaFine, because yep, I'm going to emboss this as well. I've gone a bit over my line at the bottom, so I'm just going to go back in with my black and make my black thicker, or else I'd end up with white underneath. So I've got clear embossing powder. This is Wow Clear Gloss. And hopefully this will just stick. Like I said, I should probably have used anti-static beforehand, but you can learn from my mistakes. And don't do what I do and spill it everywhere, which is what I just did. My tip for the top when using embossing powder is always work on another scrap piece of paper in case you spill it like I just did. So if you've done that, what I've just done, and didn't have anti-static on your image, it is probably worth going round and doing this and just getting rid of anything, because I only want it on this line. It's actually quite easy to do because I can just kind of go up to the line. Do as I say, not as I do. Put anti-static on your image first before you start tracing. It has stuck on some of the VersaFine, even though it had been drying for quite a while. And now I think that I'm going to put my Happy Father's Day stamp in there before I colour as well. So I'm going to do the same thing and stamp, and in black, this time in VersaFine, and put clear heat embossing on that so it matches the outline. And again, I should have used anti-static powder. I forgot again. So I'm actually just going to do it in exactly the same way. Again, you could colour this however you want to, but because I've now got the heat embossing around the outside edge, I've got a little bit of something to resist my paint, so I won't go outside the edges. So if you were worried about that, this is an alternate way to do it. As I said, I'm really no watercolour artist, but I can manage enough to do that. So with that one, we've got the shiny outline to work up to. So if you don't like the idea with the first one of just using the mask as your edge, you can do something like this. So that was using exactly the same mask, exactly the same stamp. This one's more like the technique of highlight stamping or highlight colouring. So you do a stamped image and then you pick a piece to colour. The rest of the image is there, but not coloured in. And again, you could put anything inside your images. They're completely flat cards, so as cheap as you'll get on the postage. The only limit on this is your own imagination and what stamp that you've got that you could put inside your image. Like, subscribe, it helps all of us creators. Completely free to you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon. Bye for now.